Yes, Jesus is coming back, and we are going to look at what happens when he returns to the holy city of Jerusalem. We are going to look into the details of the Battle of Jerusalem as it begins and as Christ returns. It is an important part of the Armageddon campaign because it is the turning point for the nation of Israel. Jesus will be redeeming a repentant nation of Israel. They will no longer be considered as sinners as they once were. And as a result, he will bring his people together. We are going to see how he is going to accomplish them. I hope you are a supporter of the nation. They're sinners today, but remember, they are still his people. My name is Vince, and now let's get into it because this is an exciting study. Now, when the Battle of Jerusalem is going to start, the Bible tells us what the Antichrist's location will be. We get a lot of information from the context of Isaiah chapter 10, verses 23 to 34. And what's going on within this context is the Assyrian is mentioned here, and he is mentioned as the one that brings on God's indignation or his wrath upon the nation of Israel, God's own people. But within the context of what's happening, he is coming southward from the northeast side of the city. I've kind of stretched out a map here. It does show the open areas, but this is where Jerusalem would be located, and he would be moving southward. But he gets only so far. He gets to what's referred to as Nob. Now, Nob is an ancient city in that area that is just northeast of Jerusalem. And there he will stop. And this is the day that the Lord is returning. Listen what it says here in Isaiah 10:32. Yet today, or literally this day, he, the Antichrist, will halt at Nob. He's not going to go any further. This is far as he gets. Notice what he does. He shakes his fist at the mountain of the daughter of Zion, the hill of Jerusalem. Allow me to explain. A mountain is always represented as a king or kingdom in the Bible. So he is angered at. He's raising his fist. He's shaking his fist to the kingdom that is about to be established, and it's called the daughter of Zion for a reason, because the daughter of Zion is a term that always refers to the nation's survivors. So it is the kingdom that is going to be established for the next 1,000 years. And where is that hill currently at? It is Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. Then it says in verse 33, behold, the Lord, the God of hosts. Now, who is doing this? Even though the Antichrist is the one that is implementing the judgment on the nation, he will lop off the bogues with a terrible crash. In other words, the branches are coming down here. Those who are tall in stature will be cut down. Those who are lofty will be abased. He is removing the prideful from the nation of Israel. And then he will cut down the thickets of the forest with an iron axe. In other words, the removal of those people that tied in with those that were prideful and leading the rebellion. And then we have this word. And this word is kind of tricky, and it says, and Lebanon will fall by the mighty one. Now, the mighty one here is not the Antichrist, but it is God who is bringing it down. Antichrist is just doing his dirty work. Now, Lebanon, we get that term from places like Judges 9:15, and it's also in Ezekiel 17. We get the idea that it is talking about the city of Jerusalem. Now, when we look at Zechariah 11, 1-3, this is exactly what it's talking about. It's talking about the judgment of the people by the Antichrist in Jerusalem. It says, "Open your doors, O Jerusalem, O Lebanon, that fire may feed on your cedars." Now, trees always represent people. Cedars are royalty. These are princes and kings. You will also find that in Ezekiel. I think it's in 16, but it could be 17. I believe it's 16. And he says, the cedars are going to be burned here. Wail, O cypress, for the cedar has fallen. The cypress here are the common people that put their hope in these leaders, in this royalty. Don't get it wrong. We're being misled too here in America. Don't think your leaders are there helping you and focused on you. It's about them. All they do is convince us to follow them. And why are the common people wailing? Well, because the glorious trees have been destroyed. The important people to them are now gone. And it says, O oaks of Bashan, for the impenetrable forest has come down. Now, the oaks here are the mighty ones. They are the people that drive the bus and have the power. These are people that we would say would be like our Bill Gates, the owner of Tesla. You always hear about him in the news, right? These are all important people. The bankers, these are the impenetrable four, the ones that thought that this would last forever. There is a sound of the shepherd's wail for their glorious ruin, and there is a sound of young lions roar. Of the young lions roar is talking about they are hearing the warriors approach. They are hearing their enemies roar, and it is by this enemy, the pride of the Jordan, Jerusalem, is ruined. Jesus has not arrived yet, but let's understand what's going on because Jerusalem here is in panic mode. See, most of these people are going to be wiped out. The Bible claims that there will only be a third of the people surviving. So, what is still going on? Jesus hasn't arrived yet. This is what's going on. And now, the Antichrist and his forces are entering the city, but he is not. Now, if we look at Zechariah 14, verses 2 and 3, this is what it tells us. And this becomes important because there is also a promise that is given here by God. Verse 2, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. Now, we know the closest in nations are those mentioned in Psalm 83. But here there are other nations coming upon Israel as well. For the most part, it is the Psalm 83 nations that have entered the city because and in this battle against Jerusalem, and the city shall be taken. The city falls. It goes into the hands of those forces. And what is going on in that city? Well, the houses are being rifled. They're going through everything in its houses. You have complete chaos, complete anarchy. The women are being ravaged. Women are being raped. This is not a good thing. And half the city shall go into captivity. So they are already taking out people in their custody and moving them out of the city into captivity. And then it says these words, and the residue of the people, the residue, just what's left on top here, shall not be cut off from the city. Why is he saying that? They're in the city. They are cut off. Well, we're going to talk about that in a little bit because this is a promise. Then, now when Jesus sees this is going on, it is at that time he goes forth to fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle. What is that day of battle? Well, I think that's originally probably when the war started with Satan and his angels, and he went forth and did battle. So, this promise we are going to get to in a second. In the meantime, I would invite you to give this study a thumbs up. Maybe consider subscribing and watching some of our other videos, not just on the campaign of Armageddon, but on the end times as a whole. All right, he's back. Yes, let's look at these verses that talk about his arrival. Zechariah 14, verses 3 to 5. Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations as when he fights on a day of battle. And in that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which is in front of Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives will split in the middle from east to west by a very large valley, so that half the mountain will move toward the north and the other half toward the south. And you, Judah, you who are the residue, will flee by the valley of the mountains, for the valley will reach to Azel. Yes, you will flee just as you fled before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah the king of Judah. Then the Lord, my God, will come and all of his holy ones with him. The situation is dire. I mean, it's at the point where Israel is about to be wiped out. If you'll notice these blue areas, you can imagine how encompassed they are by the enemy. The Antichrist would be somewhere up here off to this area just to the northeast of the Mount of Olives. Now, what's going on is the Lord is arriving to be able to defend Israel and destroy their enemies. So he will be coming in from the east, moving westward, and he will arrive at the Mount of Olives. And when he arrives at the Mount of Olives, the armies of the Lord will be following him. So it is at this point he will touch down on the Mount of Olives, and the mountain itself will split east to west from its middle. It will spread out. And what would happen as that's happening, it will create a valley to the north and a valley to the south. This is very important because what's happening now, the resistance that is coming from the north is now being sealed. Any of the enemy that is in this area will be wiped out, will be eliminated. And as this has happened, he is now preparing a way of escape for Israel because this valley here, now, which is to the north, will provide any escaping Jews an escape route in that direction and those held out in the city here. So remember, the army of the Lord, the host, and the escapees from Basra are coming also behind the Lord from the east going to the west. Okay, now, with this valley being created, running north and south, this now provides an opportunity of escape. You will notice in Zechariah 14, verse 5, it says, and you, it's talking about the residue here that is held out in Jerusalem, primarily at the temple, but you will flee by the valley of my mountains. Those two mountains are the two that split, creating that valley running north and south. They will flee in that direction. So, what we have here is they are held over here. You'll notice this is the western wall right in this area. This is where the Jews had been repented, being led by the fig tree, the priesthood, and they now see their opportunity to flee. So they start running toward this valley that was created by the Lord, stepping down on the Mount of Olives. And naturally, this means that the enemy cannot pursue them because of the mountain split. So these people, these remaining survivors, the daughter of Zion, they start moving southward in this valley to escape the northern armies. Now remember, Jesus is over here over the Mount of Olive. He's going to be going to deal with the Antichrist just northeast of the area that just created this valley. However, the armies of the Lord of hosts have moved in this direction. And this is very, very important because what people don't realize is what's going on here. The armies are unifying those that are escaping as the residue and those from the heavenly host, and the army that came in from Basra united with the heavenly host, and they are going to be adjoining. You will notice it says, for the valley of the mountains will reach to Azel. So now this Azel is kind of a misunderstood word. Many people think it is a place that is in the southeast of the temple, but it is not. It is not literally a place. What you need to do is go look at the original Hebrew word there. And literally, what the word means is telling us what is going to happen. The word azel is not a place, but Strong's Concordance tells us that it has a primitive root meaning and it means to join. Well, who are they joining with? And why are they joining? Well, if you look at the root word that it came from, it says the joining is as to a side of something or something near. So what's happening is what is near? The armies of the Lord of hosts. They are moving southward into this valley as we, returning in our heavenly glory, are joining up with them. And then the remnant, the woman that we talked about that was about to give birth, who has officially now given birth to the return of the Messiah, she is positioned here. So all three of us, the heavenly host, the residue, and the escapees from Basra, will now be joined together. Something the Bible says that we sometimes kind of look at without much understanding is why they are fleeing. Now, if you can imagine, you are one of the remnant of Israel, and you are sitting in the temple compound, and all of the enemies have entered this city. You are completely surrounded. You have nowhere to go. And then all of a sudden, this big mountain splits in two, and the valley opens up, and you begin to say, hey, what the heck? We have no other choice. We either flee to this valley, and it says, yes, you will flee as you fled before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. If you can imagine, when an earthquake happens and things start falling around you, you get your tail out of Dodge. And this means that they were afraid, but yet they didn't really give it much thought because they knew it was the Lord, but they moved quickly. That's the whole point. They moved as fast as they can. And as we said, they are joining up here. It says, then the Lord God will come and all his holy ones with him. So obviously, they are there for him to meet. He is right over here. He came to them, they met, and all his holy ones are there. And why is this so important? Why am I being redundant here? Well, very easily, because we talked about this in Zechariah 14 verses 2 and 3, where it said, the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then Jehovah will go forth and fight against those nations. Now, what is that telling us? It tells us even though they are getting out of Dodge, it is telling us that when they meet and the army is unified, they have access back. And how do they have access back? The same way they got out. They are going to go right back up this valley, and they are going to be following the Lord along with all of us to be able to watch the Lord go fight against their enemies. And by the way, they will also take part in this fighting. We will look at that next time, and we will look also at next time when the Antichrist gets his. So we are not over. The battle for Jerusalem will continue. Now, if you want to catch the next video, I suggest that you subscribe and give this one a thumbs up so more people will have the opportunity to see what is going on with this particular battle as the Lord has returned. Please share this video with your friends. It's an important study. And I want to thank you again for joining me. Remember, next time we're seeing the end of Antichrist, seeing the end of the false prophet, and seeing how God deals with many of his enemies and the enemies of Israel. Again, my name is Vince. Look forward to seeing you.